I took over SMU in NCAA basketball and have spent the past 4 seasons rebuilding them. Since then, we have won 2 conference championships and have made it as far as the Sweet 16, but have not won a national championship yet. With the exact same roster returning from last season, we were poised to finally win the championship this year. With it being season 5, however, it was my last chance to do so, and if I didn't win SMU a national championship this year, I will have to give away a copy of NCAA basketball to a subscriber who comments on this video. And with as much as that game costs these days, I have to win this championship. Our first game of the season was at home going up against Binghamton University, and just by looking at their roster, this should be an easy win for us tonight because their highest ranked player is Justin Daniels, who's only 72 overall. Despite that difference on paper, Binghamton was keeping it closer than I thought late here in this game, as we were only up by 18 points now, and this was a low scoring game for our team. Granted, there was still plenty of time left in this game, and we would definitely be scoring a lot more points if Devin Norton could keep knocking down shots like this. But for being the number 13 team in the nation, not blowing this team out by more had me a little concerned. We were on a 9-0 run though, and that was hopefully changing as Binghamton would have to call a timeout, but they still couldn't slow down our offense as Nathan Malloy was so close to reaching a double-double on this play. With just under 2 minutes to play, it would be tough for him as he was getting triple teamed on the full court press, but he would finally reach it here. And why not make it one more for extra measures as Devin Norton would knock down this deep 3-pointer. Even though Binghamton was knocking down some 3-pointers of their own late here in the game, with just over a minute to go, there was nothing much else they could do in this one, as with only 5 seconds left, we would run out the clock here to pick up a win in our first game of the season, and hopefully there would be many more of those to come here in season number 5. Nathan Malloy wasn't the only player on our team to have a double-double tonight though, as our junior center Doug Ware put up 15 points and an insane 19 rebounds tonight, with Devin Norton as well being 1 rebound shy of a double-double himself. While Nathan Malloy wasn't going to get a double-double in this game, Cameron Chapman had an opportunity to do so, as he was only 1 rebound shy of it and would have an opportunity here but could not get it, and once again would have another opportunity on this shot but would get out-rebounded by his matchup. With only 30 seconds to go, there wasn't much time left for him to get this double-double, but after knocking down this free throw, he would be taken out of the game, and although Cameron Chapman wouldn't pick up the double-double in this game against Murray State, our team would still pick up the huge time win to make it 2 wins in a row, and he would finish with a great stat line of 20 points, 9 rebounds, 1 assist, and 3 blocks. As great as Cameron Chapman and his teammates were, we were losing a lot of them to graduation though, so we had to try and recruit some of their replacements, and our top target was shooting guard Jamal Daniels, who was the 2nd ranked player in the entire country, but despite that, I have no idea how Siena and Southern Illinois were on his top school list. We needed a small forward as well, but unfortunately there were no one that was interested in coming to our school, so the next best prospect we could get that our team needed was the 6'10 power forward Tim Puckett. He was a sophomore JUCO, the 83rd ranked in the country, and had us 2nd on his list. Even though this was our last year of the rebuild and we wouldn't actually be playing with any of the recruits we signed, we still hadn't signed a 5-star prospect in the series yet, and that is something I wanted to change. I don't think we can actually call ourselves a contender or a real blue blood program until we do so. So I'm going to try my best to make sure we can sign at least 1 5-star prospect this season, and it shouldn't be too hard if we can keep winning games just like this. Our junior shooting guard Devin Norton would go off for 27 points in this game against Long Beach State, and that win would give us a perfect 3-0 start to the season, but there were plenty of undefeated teams in our conference. We, however, were the only ranked team in Conference USA, but haven't moved up or down from that number 13 spot. It was no surprise that Devin Norton was our star player this year, as he was the only player averaging over 20 points per game for us. But that's also not surprising when you look at the minutes played for the starters compared to the bench unit this season so far. We had finally moved up to the top spot for 5-star shooting guard Jamal Daniels' school list, and we would have head coach Husky Nation give him a call talking about the team prestige, as well as officially offering him a scholarship to come play for SMU. We would do the exact same thing for 4-star power forward Tim Puckett, as even though we weren't his top school, we weren't far behind from Utah State. We were now getting ready for the Maui Invitational Tournament, a preseason tournament we've won the past 2 seasons in a row, but our first round matchup was going to be tough as we were taking on number 12 ranked Iowa. Even though they were ranked high, on paper we technically were a better team, but we would have to look out for Derek Williams, who was averaging 29 points a game for the Hawkeyes. I will be totally honest, I thought this game against Iowa would be a lot closer, as they'd got cold in the second half and we just couldn't seem to miss any shots. Like expected, Derek Williams had been a problem for us this game, as this putback would put him at 20 points on the night, but no one else really seemed to be able to score for Iowa, as he had almost half of their total points in this matchup. Despite Iowa trying their best to get back in this game, their deficit was almost 30 points, and I have no idea how they're ranked 12 and we are ranked number 23. Maybe it's been the strength of schedule we've had early on that has dropped us that far down in the polls, but after the domination we've seen tonight, I fully expect that to change very soon. I don't think this first round matchup for Iowa could have been any more embarrassing for them than it was, but somehow they kept finding ways to make this game even worse than it already was for themselves. We would end up walking away with a 25-point victory here in the first round of the Maui Invitational Tournament, thanks to a huge 30-point performance from Devin Norton. That would send us to a second round game against the Salukis of Southern Illinois University, and somehow this was turning into the closest, most competitive game yet we've had this season. We were up by double digits, so we had a little wiggle room, but we still had to stand strong on defense. And we would get lucky here, but couldn't be making stupid mistakes or plays like this. We were playing some scrappy defense tonight, forcing turnovers like this that would result in easy buckets at the other end for us. And it was paying off, as we had extended our lead now up to 16 points over the Salukis. They were looking for any chance to swing the momentum here in their favor, and this block against Cameron Chapman just might do that, as they would turn it into a fast break bucket, but we would answer right back with a corner three from Devin Norton. With just over a minute and a half left in this game, there was not much Southern Illinois could do, but man, what a poster by the true freshman Tony Spivey. That would possibly get some life back in this Southern Illinois offense, but it wouldn't be enough, as they would get another fast break slam dunk. Southern Illinois was now trying to get back in the game by fouling us, so we would bring in our lineup dedicated for free throws. They weren't quick enough, however, to get to Nathan Malloy, and that would allow him to knock down this three-pointer, as that shot would end up being the dagger and they wouldn't foul us again, and we would get the second round victory over Southern Illinois, sending us back to the Maui Invitational Tournament Championship. We made it to a preseason tournament championship, but things hadn't been going our way so far today. We were down by 9 to Arkansas with under 6 minutes to go, and that lead was slowly growing for them. We desperately needed this three-pointer to fall from Devin Norton, but it wouldn't, and I had a feeling we might be losing our first game of the season. Arkansas just literally could not miss from anywhere on the field, but finally we would find Devin Norton open and he would knock down a shot for us. Only down by 10 and still 4 minutes to go in the game. It wasn't a lot of time, but it was enough time for us. But it certainly wasn't gonna happen if we kept making plays like this. Lexi Richard would complete the and one for Arkansas, and we found ourselves still down by double digits after this three-point shot. With only 2 minutes to go, time was running out and it was looking really bad for us now, as we still could not hit a shot from anywhere to save our life tonight. We'd given up way too many second chance opportunities like this tonight to the Razorbacks, and that is one of the main reasons why we would end up losing this championship game to them and would not be able to complete the three-peat here in Maui. Despite that loss to Arkansas, it would be our only one in the entire month of November, as we would finish the first month of the season sitting at 5-1, but unfortunately our rivals the Memphis Tigers would be the only team to finish undefeated this month. Thankfully, we were still projected to win the conference to make the NCAA tournament, because remember, we have to win it this year or I am buying one of you guys who comments down below a copy of NCAA basketball off of eBay. No surprise that Devin Norton throughout the first month was our top player on the squad, but Nathan Malloy has seen a little rise in success too, as he was now averaging 20 points a game as well. And to make matters even better, we officially signed 4-star power forward Tim Puckett as well. Jamal Daniel, the 5-star shooting guard, still hadn't signed, but he was close, and we did find out that our program's history didn't matter much to him when we talked to him about it. So this time instead, when Coach Husky went to visit, he would talk about coach prestige of the program, and we would also invite him to a game against number 22 Iowa State. Seeing us defeat a ranked team hopefully will be enough to get him to sign on the dotted line for us, but that wouldn't even be necessary, as after that win against TCU, he would sign with us finally, and to our surprise, prize got an upgrade as well, as we had now signed the #1 player in the entire nation. We were starting the second month of season number 5 here after going 6-1 in the first month, and we were trying to avoid making it 2 losses on the season as we were down to Iowa State here late in the second half. We were thankfully getting it closer though, as Devin Norton would knock down this 3-pointer for us, but we still hadn't been able to slow down the Cyclones' offense here in the second half. If we wanted to win this game tonight here at home, turnovers like this weren't going to help our case at all. But finally, we would get a defensive stop here as we would force Iowa State to miss this shot, and then after some fancy dribble moves, Nathan Malloy would knock down this shot to make it a 4-point game. Only down by 3 now, we had an opportunity to tie this game up, but Nathan Malloy would turn the ball over and that would result in easy points. But we would respond right back with a Jamal Lewis 3-pointer. Only down by 2, we had another chance to take the lead here and Devin Norton would do just that. But Iowa State wasn't far behind us, as both of these free throws would give them the lead back. It looked like this was going to be a back and forth game down to the wire, as Cameron Chapman breathed some new life into our offense with that play. We needed to capitalize on that momentum here, as Devin Norton would have it in the left corner down to Cameron Chapman, and he would go to work in the post again, but is blocked. But he would come up huge with a block of his own on the other end. With less than a minute to go and Iowa State last shot off the mark, we had an opportunity to run out as much clock here as we could, but finally they would start fouling us. Nathan Malloy would get sent to the line for 1-1, as he would come up clutch and knock down both of his free throws for us. And that would only leave 6 seconds left for Iowa State, as they would send this to the corner for 3, giving us one last chance to try to win the game, as Nathan Malloy's shot would fall, and the senior point guard would win it with that shot, as well as 23 points and 6 steals on the night. Thankfully, this next game at home wasn't as close as our previous one, and this is something I have never seen in this game. The ball got stuck on the rim. Finally, it has fallen down. I have never seen that in this game. Up by 37 though, there was no way George Washington was coming back in this game. But with not much time left to go, why not try to make it an even 40-point win for us? As George Washington's last shot of the game would be off the mark, and we would walk away with the 40-point victory here at home over them. And our strong start to the second month of the season would continue. We'd already signed 2 prospects this season in recruiting, including the #1 prospect in the entire country, Jamal Daniel. But we weren't done recruiting just yet, as we were going after 4-star center Branton Gassaway. And although we weren't top of his list, we were quickly climbing up. Checking in on conference standings, unfortunately Memphis was still the only team in the conference that could say they were undefeated. And part of that was their junior shooting guard Dennis Norwood, who was in contention for National Player of the Year. It was tough, however, seeing Memphis have multiple players up for national awards this season. What Memphis couldn't say, however, that we could, is that we were ranked back in the top 25 polls at number 20, and we're slowly but surely climbing our way back up that list. So you already know I had that matchup against them on January 8th circled on the calendar. We couldn't focus on that Memphis game too much yet though, as we still had more games to play, and it really looked like our team was starting to hit a stride, as this was some of the best basketball we've been playing. Nevada was absolutely no match for us in this contest tonight, and I don't think calling a timeout here with a minute and a half left is going to change anything. Maybe that timeout would help them knock down this 3-pointer after coming out of the huddle, but that certainly wasn't going to change the grand scheme of things in the least bit, as now they couldn't even dribble up the court without going out of bounds. We would send in our bench unit to close out the game, and with less than a minute to go, this one was absolutely a wrap. We would absolutely embarrass the Wolfpack with a 53-point win here at home tonight. Other than Arkansas and Iowa State, there just hadn't been any team so far on our schedule that was able to compete with us. But the thing is, we weren't only playing great offense this season, as we were playing stifling defense as well too. We would pick up another blowout victory at home with a 28-point win over BYU, but then somehow found ourselves in this close one against Old Dominion tonight. Only down by 4 with over 4.5 minutes to go in this game meant we had plenty of time to make this comeback. So I wasn't too worried, especially when Devin Norton would give us the lead with a shot. We were on an 8-0 run, and after this miss from ODU, we were only looking to extend it, but that would finally come to an end as the Monarchs would get this bucket here on second chance points. It was under 3 minutes to go now in the game, and we only had a 1-point lead against the Monarchs. But that tough shot from Nathan Malloy would extend it to 3 points for us. We were looking to make it 6 with this 3-pointer from Devin Norton in the corner, and why not make it one more in fast break transition? I'm so surprised at this point that Old Dominion's coach has not called a timeout to try to slow down our momentum, as with under a minute and a half left to go now in this game, the Monarchs could use any chance they could to get themselves back in this one. They weren't even pressing us at half court, which made it easy to get shots up like this, and finally with under a minute to go, they would start pressing and fouling us. We wanted to get the ball in Nathan Malloy's hands and get him to the free throw line, because statistically, he was our best free throw shooter. Case in point right here is he would knock both of them down, and Old Dominion still wasn't going to use a timeout. It seemed to pay off for them as they would knock down that 3-pointer, but once again, Nathan Malloy is not who they wanted at the line, as so far, he was 4 for 4 on the night. It looked like the Monarchs had finally given up as they weren't going to foul us and let us run out the rest of the clock, as we would escape with one of our closest victories yet this season by only 9 points. 1 week later in recruiting, we had moved up to second on Brandon Gassaway's school list, and when we tried to talk to him about team prestige, that clearly wasn't going to be a factor. So instead, we decided we would try to talk to him about coach prestige at our school, and would also invite him to our upcoming game against Northern Illinois. As a fan and alumni of Northern Illinois, it pains me to see how horrible they are in this game, but at least that meant it was going to be a surefire victory for us at home tonight. Hopefully that meant we would be able to land our 3rd recruit of the season in what was turning out to be our best recruiting class of this entire rebuild so far. It pains me even more as a Husky alumni to see our biggest victory of the season will be against them, as things just kept seeming to get worse and worse for the Huskies tonight. We would run the rest of the clock out, finally putting the Huskies out of their misery and picking up the 55-point win here on a crucial game that we needed it for. That would bring us to the final game of non-conference play in what was perhaps our biggest and toughest matchup of our entire season. We were taking on the 10-2 Duke Blue Devils, who, believe it or not, were actually ranked below us in the top 25 polls, but they were led by their senior star center Jerome Kaplan, who was one of the top 5 candidates for National Player of the Year. He was averaging a double-double on the season with 23 points and 14 rebounds per game, and it might be easy to do that when you're freaking 7 feet tall. Not only did we have to worry about that, but we were also playing at Duke Stadium, which was the 17th toughest place to play in the entire country. Knowing we had to win this game, our alumni would make a huge donation to the school to try to help the team, upgrading our program's weight room to add +2 strength, speed, and quickness to all the players headed into this matchup against Duke. It was going to be a close one as we were down by 5 with just under 4 minutes to go, and even though we missed that 3-pointer, we would try again from the exact same spot, and even though we would miss that one, James Lewis would come up with a steal and turn it into easy points, as we desperately needed that to get back in this one, and Duke again making another bad turnover, and we just could not convert on the other end. We were playing like we just didn't want to win this game against Duke tonight, as we were given opportunities but couldn't convert, and the Blue Devils were converting every opportunity they had as they would go up by 9. Something needed to change here, and it needed to change quick, but Devin Norton seemed to be shooting us out of the game tonight until this shot. We still had a long way to go though, as Nathan Malloy would come up with another steal, and then James Lewis would knock this one down, as the momentum finally started to seem to be swinging our way. With less than a minute to go, we needed a defensive stop here against Duke, but could not be giving up second chance points. And if anything other than our poor shooting ability in the second half was going to keep us from winning this game, it was going to be the second chance looks we had given up to Duke. Down by 4, we needed a stop big time, so we had to start fouling the Blue Devils, and what are we doing? We would finally get them to the free throw line here, but there was only 11.5 seconds left to go. That meant we had to get down the court quickly and knock down this 3-pointer, as Nathan Malloy would foul out of the game. We now needed Duke to miss this free throw, but they wouldn't, and it was looking like we wouldn't win this game, and I have no idea why Devin Norton got taken out of the game when he's our best 3-point shooter, and even though we would make that last shot, it wouldn't matter at all, as Duke would narrowly escape with the 2-point victory over us here at their home court. What a disappointing way to end non-conference play, but it was time to start January, and Conference USA play was right around the corner. On the bright side though, despite that loss to Duke, we would end up signing 4-star center Brandon Gassaway after that loss, and we were headed into conference play with the second best record, still 2 games behind behind Memphis, who was undefeated. The media had taken notice though of Memphis's hot start to the season and now projected them to be the winner of Conference USA. So we needed our players like Devin Norton, Nathan Malloy, and Cameron Chapman to continue the great season they had had so far and keep us winning through conference play. We were starting conference play for the last time in season number 5 of this rebuild, and we needed to perform well in conference play because we were in second place behind Memphis headed into it. It was no surprise that we were absolutely blowing out East Carolina in this game because they were the worst team in the conference so far this season headed into conference play. I have a feeling a lot of our conference matchups this season are going to be like this, but I do know for sure that we're going to have some tougher matchups later in the season. So some early wins like this in conference play for us will do nothing but help our confidence going forward. Doug Ware had an insane stat line of 26 rebounds tonight, so it is no surprise at all that he was the third leading rebounder in the entire country. We had one more matchup before our big game against Memphis, and this team seemed to be firing on all cylinders still headed into it as we were dominating Rice. Once again though, we were playing against one of the worst teams in our entire conference, so we wouldn't get a real true test of how good we were until our next game against Memphis. Don't get me wrong though, because this was an indication that we were a very strong defensive team, and we were going to have to be dominant on both sides of the ball if we wanted to win our next game against the Tigers. We were taking on the Memphis Tigers in what was going to be one of our toughest conference games of the season, but surprisingly, in only 2 games so far, they had already lost one conference matchup. It wasn't looking great for us in this one as we were down by 8 with just under 3 minutes to go, and for every shot we were missing, Memphis seemed to go down and hit a shot of their own. Finally, we would find Devin Norton open for 3, but Memphis just wasn't missing from beyond the arc either. They had one of the best players in the country who was up for National Player of the Year, and he had been killing us this entire game as with just over a minute to go, we were still down by 6. Thankfully, that 3 from Nathan Malloy would make it a 3-point game, and then he would knock that one free, and on the fast break would hit another 3-pointer as we were on a 12-2 run here late in the second half. Peter Rojas would make his way to the line for the Tigers, and these 2 free throws would put them up by 2. But we had a secret weapon we had been going to all season, and it was Devin Norton. 30 seconds to go, and Memphis would call a timeout as they were now down by 1 with 28.5 seconds left to go. The Tigers could take the lead on this possession as Rojas' shot was off the mark, and we'd come down with the rebound. And it looked like it was going to come down to free throws in this game tonight. With only 5 seconds left, Nathan Malloy would go to the line. After knocking down the first, he would hit his second shot, leaving Memphis down by 3 with less than 5 seconds to go as they'd throw it behind the 3-point line, and that shot would not fall. And we would barely escape with the 3-point win against the Tigers here at home. UTEP was next up on our schedule, and surprisingly, they were going to be another tough conference matchup as they were on a 5-game winning streak and currently sat atop of the Conference USA standings. Surprisingly, however, this game wasn't quite as close as I thought it was going to be headed into it, as with just under 3 minutes to go, we had a 19-point lead. It seems to me that Memphis is probably going to be our toughest opponent in the conference, with UTEP's 5-game winning streak not being safe against us. Up by 17 with under a minute and a half to go, it looked like this game was all but wrapped up, as UTEP's 5-game win streak would come to an end and we would extend ours to 4. We have won 4 conference games in a row, and a win against Tulsa tonight could make it 5, and it was looking like that could be a real possibility against the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes here at home tonight. They were, however, one of the best teams in the conference headed into this season, so we couldn't count them out, but at this point, I think it was pretty safe to say this game was ours. With just under a minute and a half to go and being down by 18, there was no way Tulsa could complete the comeback. And with this win tonight here at home, that would extend our winning streak to 5 games in conference play, putting us in sole lead of Conference USA for the first time this season. Memphis had fallen all the way from the top of the conference down to 6th place. And finally, we were back to being the media's pick to win the conference and win the NCAA automatic bid, with a current projection of picking up a 2nd seed in the Midwest region. That would be huge for us if we were able to land the 2nd seed in the tournament, because that would give us one of the easiest paths to finding our way to the national championship this year. Obviously, with that loss to Duke early on in the season, I don't think we're going to be able to land a number 1 seed, so I will happily take a 2nd seed if that's what the tournament committee gives us. You can never fully know though, and maybe we'll get lucky and still somehow land a number 1 seed. And so if we want any chance of that happening, we're going to need to keep playing like we have been in conference play so far. In our rematch against ECU, we would absolutely destroy them as they wouldn't even reach 50 points, and would follow that up with an even bigger blowout against Southern Miss, who wouldn't even reach 40. We were playing our last game in the month of January, and we were on the road taking on the Marshall Thundering Herd. And while this game wasn't an important one in the grand scheme of conference standings, it was still important to us because if we could win this one, it would extend our winning streak to 8. We were, however, going to try to forget some embarrassing plays like that and try to focus on the positives of blowing out Marshall on the road. One of the great things about these blowouts was that it gave our bench unit some time to get in and gain some experience, as they seemed to have no problem holding things down on both sides of the ball for us. They would come in to clean this game up and help get us an 87-39 win over the Thundering Herd, extending our win streak to 9 games and our lead over the conference standings, with Tulsa and Memphis right behind us, who we've already beat this season, and Houston, who we would play 2 times in the upcoming month of February. What a turnaround it has been for us, as Devin Norton was now the top contender for NCAA National Player of the Year, and he wasn't the only one from our team as well on the list, as Nathan Malloy was on the list as well, along with Doug Ware, giving us 4 of our 5 starters on this list. It was crazy to see that we currently had 3 of the 5 spots on the All-American first team as well, and 4 of the 5 spots on the All-Defensive first team. There was no doubt in my mind that we were going to win our conference no problem and make the NCAA tournament, but we were still only projected to have a 2 seed instead of one of the top number 1 seeds. We couldn't get too far ahead of ourselves though, as we still had a whole month to play as well as our conference tournament, including games against the UAB Blazers and 2 upcoming matchups against the Houston Cougars. We were starting the final month of play here in season number 5 of our SMU rebuild, and this game was against the UAB Blazers, and although they weren't pushing us for the top spot in the conference, they were still a pretty good team. Well, at least by the standard of the rest of the conference, they were pretty good, but not by our standards. I know this is very trivial too, and does not matter to our success this season, but I don't know how we've dropped back down to number 21, because we have not lost a single game since that matchup against Duke. I guess the only thing we're gonna have to do is go out and win the national championship to show we should have been ranked higher, because as appreciative as I am of all of you who sit down and watch my videos, I do not want to have to spend money and buy this game for one of you guys if we don't win it. Speaking of which, if you've already made it this far in the video and you haven't subscribed or turned on notifications, be sure to do so, as we would end up walking away with a huge 105-59 victory over UAB, and Devin Norton showing why he's the top candidate for Player of the Year, as he put up 37 points in this victory. That would bring us back home to a game against the Tulane Green Wave, and while we had already obviously won this game, I wanted to try to get Devin Norton a double-double with assists tonight. After that assist, he was only 2 shy of reaching the mark and now needed 1 more, and with less than a minute to go in the game, I think we could do it, as he would find Cameron Chapman, who shoots it off the side of the bucket. That's alright though, because we still have 38 seconds left to go. That's not who I wanted to pass to, and we're gonna turn the ball over, as this possession might be our last opportunity to try to get him the double-double. Can Nathan Malloy knock this shot down? He does. And why not grab 1 more rebound for the stat line, as we are going to end up walking away not only with the 113-43 point victory, but Devin Norton would get his 32-point, 11-assist double-double. Despite his great performance throughout conference play, Devin Norton has somehow fallen down from the top of the list for NCAA National Player of the Year, but hopefully a 36-point performance in our dominant win against Southern Miss can help get him back to the top of that list. We were taking on the Houston Cougars for the first time this season, and they were one of the top teams in the conference, but they hadn't been any match for us today, as we were outscoring them by over 50 points so far in this one. Like I had said earlier in the video, I truly think Memphis is only going to be our real competition this year, as even though Memphis was technically only in 4th place, they were 5 games behind us in conference standings. With only 2 games left in the season, there was no way they were coming back, but Memphis was only 2 games back from us. So with a win here tonight, and hopefully Memphis losing 1 more game, we should clinch up the number 1 spot in the conference tournament. Memphis, however, did not lose a game, so it was going to come down to these final 2 games of the season, and after picking up back-to-back wins against the Houston Cougars both at home and on the road, a win in the last game of the regular season against the Marshall Thundering Herd would secure us the regular season conference championship. We were in the final game of the regular season, and even though it was only against Marshall, it was still a very important game for us tonight. We came into this game with a 1-game lead over second place Memphis in our conference, and a win would secure us a first round bye in the conference tournament, as well as giving us our third regular season championship in a row. If it wasn't obvious yet, we were going to get the win over Marshall tonight and secure the conference title, but our work was just beginning, as we would still have to get through the conference championship to get to the NCAA tournament. Speaking of which, it was time for the Conference USA tournament, where we earned the #1 seed in a first round bye, thanks to a perfect 16-0 season in conference play with a 20-2 overall record. Obviously, the star of this season for us was our junior shooting guard Devin Norton, who averaged 25 points per game and 7 assists, and that was enough to currently land him third on the voting list for NCAA National Player of the Year. The unsung hero of this team, however, I believe, was Doug Ware, our junior center, who averaged 14 points and almost 15 rebounds a game, really helping us both offensively and defensively. Although he wouldn't win, he was one of the contenders for NCAA Defensive Player of the Year, but unfortunately would miss out on the all-defensive first team to Ty Marshall from our rivals Memphis. Headed into the conference tournament, we had one upgrade available from our alumni, so we would upgrade our weight room to now add +3 strength, speed, and quickness to all of our players. UCF would be taking on Southern Miss in the first round of the Conference USA tournament, with the Golden Knights picking up the 82-55 win, meaning that they would be our first opponent in the quarterfinal round of the Conference USA tournament. And this should hopefully be an easy victory for us, as we defeated them earlier this season 99-44. We were in the first round of our Conference USA tournament here in season number 5, and to no one's surprise, we were defeating UCF very badly, as we had done so earlier in the season to them. As most experts predicted, they thought it was going to be an easy cakewalk for us to get to the conference tournament championship, where more than likely it was going to be a rematch of us and the Memphis Tigers for the title. As expected, we would walk away with an easy first round victory, with UCF's season ending in defeat. That would send us to our second round game against UAB, which was somehow a lot closer than I expected, but that would send us to the conference championship, to where no one's surprised we were playing the Memphis Tigers. We were in the Conference USA championship, looking to repeat for the third time in this series, taking on the Memphis Tigers. We played them once earlier this season, and that game came down to the very last shot of the game, but it looked like this game was going totally different for us, as we had eventually brought in our bench unit. I wish I had better gameplay to show throughout this entire season, but we've just gotten so good that we are blowing out every single team in our conference. Quite honestly, I was surprised after season number 4 that we didn't get an invite to a bigger conference than Conference USA, and that might be one of the sole reasons holding us back from getting a #1 seed this year. I'm not going to complain, however, as we would end this game on a 9-0 run, or at least we were going to, until Memphis would knock down that shot, as once again we would repeat as Conference USA champions, defeating Memphis in this game for the third straight season in a row. After that conference championship win, it meant it was time for the NCAA tournament, and the Sunday selection show was going to be how we found out where we matched up. Obviously, we weren't going to be a top seed, as Kentucky, Indiana, Texas, and Arkansas, who we lost to this season, would get those 4 spots, and we would get a 5 seed in the West region? This makes no sense, as we are projected to get a 2 seed all season long, but I guess we're going to have to do our best, as our first round matchup was against the Knights of Fairleigh Dickinson, and they would put up a fight early on, but we would walk away with a 33-point victory in the first round of the tournament. We had a much bigger challenge coming up in the second round, as we were taking on number 13 Oklahoma in the round of 32, and this was going to be a close one, as it was tied 81-all with less than a minute to go, and we almost turned this ball over, but Devin Norton would hit this 3. As Oklahoma now was looking to respond, they would drive the lane and get this layup to fall, but we still had a 1-point lead, and we're going to run out as much clock as we could here before the Sooners decided to start fouling us. These were potentially the biggest free throws so far, and we wanted no one other than Nathan Malloy shooting them. 14.3 seconds left for Oklahoma, as they would take a 3-pointer here and would miss, as Cameron Cameron Chapman came down with the rebound, and all we needed was a single free throw to seal it, but our senior power forward would give us 2 of them. Up by 5 with only 7 seconds left to go in the game, there was nothing that Oklahoma could do to save their season, as we would finally pick up a win here in the second round of the tournament, and after knocking out Oklahoma would be headed to the Sweet 16, where we would be taking on the number 1 seed Kentucky Wildcats. This was a surprisingly close game against Kentucky, as we were only down by 1 with less than 3 minutes to go, but we did not have a lot of time to work with, so if we were going to take this lead, we needed to take it now. I knew that our team was capable of beating Kentucky, and we needed to hold on for just only 2 more minutes, as that shot would tie it back up at 82 apiece, but we would go to Devin Norton in the corner, as he would finally knock down a 3-pointer after being cold all second half, and now we just needed a defensive stop. We couldn't get it, however, as the Wildcats would knock down that 3-pointer, but we had one of our own, and it looked like this game was going to be a shootout that came down to the very last possession to determine the winner. After that missed shot, we had a chance to extend our lead, but James Lewis could not knock down this fast break 3-pointer, and with under a minute to go now, Kentucky would have a chance to make it a 1-point game or tie it up, but they could not. With the shot clock now turned off as well, we could start draining some clock before Kentucky would eventually have to start intentionally fouling us, and you already know we wanted Nathan Malloy to get to the line. Our point guard had an opportunity to seal this game for us, and with only 6 seconds left, he would knock down both his free throws, and I have no idea why we were taking him out of the game. I guess it doesn't matter though, as we weren't going to have another possession, and Kentucky wouldn't be able to pull this one off, as we had defeated the number 1 overall seed in the entire tournament, and we would be moving on to the Elite 8. What a heartbreaking loss for the Kentucky Wildcats. But with that win, we might be the new favorites to win the national championship. We were taking on the Villanova Wildcats in the Elite 8 of the NCAA tournament, and we had an opportunity to get to the Final Four for the first time in this entire rebuild series. It wasn't going to happen if we kept shooting ourselves out of the game, but finally Nathan Malloy would hit a shot, and now all we had to do was hold on to this 7-point lead with just over a minute to go in the game. After Villanova couldn't knock this shot down, they would decide it was time to start intentionally fouling us, but we didn't want to give them any chance to come back as we'd knock down this shot. They would try to respond with a 3-pointer of their own, and they would get lucky, but they wouldn't be able to slow down Nathan Malloy from beyond the arc. With only 18 seconds left, they realized there was no hope of coming back for them, and honestly, this game was so much easier than that matchup against the number 1 Kentucky Wildcats, as we would be headed to the Final Four for the very first time in this rebuild, where we would be taking on the number 1 seed from the South region, the Texas Longhorns. We were in the Final Four for the first time in our SMU rebuild, and would be taking on the winner of Arkansas and Indiana. This Texas team was going to be tough, as it was all upperclassmen, but we had already defeated the number 1 team in the conference, the Kentucky Wildcats, so we should be able to win tonight. Our first shot was off the mark, but Texas would get the ball down in the paint and score the first bucket, and I did lower the time on the halves, so we did not have a lot of time to work with. Once again, we would miss our shot, but coming up with a steal here, Cameron Chapman would finish in transition, and this time it was Nathan Malloy coming up with a steal, and he would slam it down to give us the lead. If we wanted to win this game, we could not give Texas easy looks or second chance opportunities, and we would need to be able to knock down the 3-point shot, which we hadn't been able to do until now. This was our first opportunity to extend our lead over the Longhorns, as this shot would fall from Devin Norton, but with just over 2 minutes to go in the first half, Texas seemed to be keeping this a close one. Devin Norton had scored 8 of our 12 points so far, so he had the hot hand, and we wanted to keep feeding him. Unfortunately, that shot wouldn't fall, but Doug Ware would bully his way to the basket on our next possession. Texas needed to get something going here, and finally they would, as this turnaround jumper would fall for them, as we were under a minute to go here in the first half, and James Lewis would hit a 3-pointer, extending our lead over the Longhorns to 7 points. The shot clock had turned off at this point, and we were holding the ball for the last shot as Devin Norton would fire up a corner 3, knocking it down as we head into halftime, giving us a 20-12 lead over the Longhorns here in our Final Four matchup. So far this season, when leading at halftime, we were a undefeated 30-0 on the year, so hopefully that was a sign of things to come as we had a 6-point lead and just had to hold Texas for 6 more minutes in this game. We had also shot 67% from beyond the 3-point line in the first half and were continuing that in the second, as Texas had still yet to make a single basket in the second half. James Lewis would bring the ball up the court, and with this shot would put us up by over double digits, as Texas needed to call a timeout and try and regroup here. Things weren't looking great for the Longhorns as they needed a bucket and they needed one quickly, and all we had to do was hold this lead against them for another 2.5 minutes and we'd be going to our first ever national championship. Down by 11 points, I'm surprised it took Texas this long to start shooting the 3-ball, and with a minute and a half to go, an 8-point comeback wasn't out of the question for the Longhorns still. With just over a minute to go, we wanted to slow things down and try to run out the clock, but Texas defense was onto us and would start intentionally fouling. Nathan Malloy would go to the free throw line, and he would knock down both of his shots for us, giving Texas less than a minute to try and come back from this 10-point deficit. That 3-point shot wouldn't fall for them, and Cameron Chapman would knock down both of his free throws, helping us secure a Final Four win here against the Texas Longhorns, and sending us to the national championship here in season number 5 of our rebuild. Thankfully, Indiana would defeat Arkansas, so we wouldn't have to rematch the Razorbacks, and it would be the 5th-seeded SMU Mustangs taking on the top-seeded Indiana Hoosiers for the national championship. We were one game away from winning the national championship in our rebuild, and the only team standing in our way of that was the top-seeded Indiana Hoosiers. So far, we were off to a strong start as we'd take a 6-0 lead, and Indiana just couldn't get any momentum going for them. We couldn't take our foot off the gas pedal as this was our chance to extend the lead, but despite a sloppy possession, the Hoosiers would finally get their first bucket of the night to fall. We were 16-2 on the season as the road team, and we were technically on the road tonight, so hopefully that wasn't a foreshadowing of things to come, but I definitely don't think it was, because this game could not have started any better. I was surprised that Indiana has not called a timeout and tried to regroup yet, because at this point in the game, they were now down by double digits. We just could not miss from beyond the 3-point line in the first half tonight, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself because right as I say that, we miss a 3-pointer. That's alright though, because we still had a 16-8 lead over the Hoosiers with a minute to go in the first half, but it seemed like we were starting to cool down on offense, so we needed to change that quickly. With under 10 seconds to go in the half, we put the ball in James Lewis's hands as he would look to take the last shot of the first half for us. And although he couldn't get it to fall, I was happy with how he played, as we were in a great position to win this one potentially with a 10-point lead headed into the second half over Indiana. We had done a great job stopping Indiana defensively as they only shot 33% from the field in the first half. And on the flip side of things, we shot an incredible 64% in the first half. We needed to keep those numbers going here in the second half if we wanted to win tonight, but so far we hadn't been able to slow down Indiana on offense yet. 3 minutes wasn't a ton of time, but it was enough time for them to come back from 10, and it might keep happening if we keep giving them easy looks to attack the basket like this. These were some crucial free throws for the Hoosiers, as they would step up to the line and knock both of them down, and they would get this game back down to only an 8-point deficit. They would continue chipping away at this lead as we would give them an easy look at second chance points, and like I said before, 3 minutes was more than enough time for this team to come back. Thankfully, Devin Norton would hit that 3-pointer, but Indiana had a chance to score 3 of their own, and Richard Ware would do just that. With only a 6-point lead, we needed to hold on to it for the next 2.5-ish minutes, and hopefully we weren't going to keep giving up easy buckets like this. It was now a 5-point game, and we had missed the last 3 shots on our last 3 possessions, but thankfully Nathan Malloy would change that by getting that layup to fall. Indiana clearly was not going away as they had come back to play in the second half tonight, but neither was Doug Ware as he would slam that down hard. Hopefully that slam dunk from Doug Ware gave a little life back into our team, as I could already tell that this game was going to come down to free throws. Somehow Nathan Malloy would miss his free throw on 1-and-1s, and now that gave a glimmer of hope here to Indiana as they were only down by 5. That turnover might have just cost them the game though, as it would be Devin Norton going 1 for 2 at the free throw line. And who knows, maybe Indiana still had a chance to come back here as they would miss that three-pointer. And maybe third time is the charm for us, as James Lewis would go 2 for 2 at the line. And with only 4.2 seconds left, Indiana could not complete the comeback, as we had finally done it here in season number 5. Coach Husky has taken the SMU Mustangs and has won them their first ever national championship. If you guys like this video, be sure to check out my last one just like it.